الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين. We start with the name of Allah. We praise and thank Allah the Exalted for the endowments He bestowed, without Allah being obligated to give anything. And we ask Allah to raise the rank of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, and the ranks of his wives, believing relatives, companions, and those who followed them sincerely until Judgment Day. And we ask Allah to protect the nation of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam from what the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam feared for his nation. Thereafter, we will continue mentioning from the book, The Illuminating Guide to Fasting. And the author, may Allah the Exalted have mercy upon him, said, section, Allah has mercy upon us by obligating us to fast Ramadan. Praise be to Allah for enabling you to reach this month and perform during it more acts of obedience and work to earn more good deeds. And know that among the greatest of deeds that Allah made a religious duty during this month, after the obligatory prayer, is fasting. Allah the Exalted made fasting this month one of the most important matters of the religion. In Surah Al-Baqarah, in verse 185, Allah the Exalted said, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْهُ. It means that the one of you who witnesses the month, let him fast it. Thus, fasting is obligatory on every healthy, residing, sane, and pubescent Muslim. As for the child who is impubescent, who has not reached puberty yet, who is not considered an adult Islamically, it is not obligatory upon him to fast, but it is made desirous to him, and he is encouraged to do it, and he is commanded to fast after reaching 7 lunar years of age, if his body can withstand fasting and his mind is developed, yani to the state of tamyiz, when he is able to comprehend and discern and answer questions based on his comprehension. So he's ordered to do this so that he would become accustomed to fasting and raised upon it, and brought up loving fasting and knowledgeable about it. Indeed, the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to make their children fast. The one who lacks sanity is not requested to fast, because the pen has been lifted from the insane until he regains his sanity, and from the child until he reaches puberty, and from the sleeping person until he wakes up. Furthermore, fasting is not obligatory on the one who is physically unable due to the likes of old age, like a very old senior citizen who fears death if he fasted, or severe harm. And likewise, the one who is inflicted with a sickness from which he does not hope cure. That is, usually the person doesn't recover from this type of illness, and with this illness, fasting would lead to an unbearable hardship. This is from the vastness of the mercy of Allah the Exalted and His facilitating. As Allah the Exalted said in the Quran in Surah Al-Hajj, verse 78, وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. Furthermore, brothers and sisters, it is not obligatory on the menstruating woman or the postpartum bleeding woman to fast while the blood is flowing from them. Menstrual blood is the blood that occurs when the woman is healthy and is not due to childbirth. It's not caused due to childbirth. And postpartum blood is the blood that exits after childbirth. Rather, for them, it is obligatory for them to make up the obligatory fasting. Also, if the menses started for the woman, even by something like only a half hour before sunset, that is, she fasted most of the day, and then just before the end of the fasting time, just before sunset, she began to bleed her menstrual blood, for example, then her fasting would be invalidated and it would be obligatory upon her to make up that day. As for the pregnant woman or the nursing woman, if they feared for themselves or for the child that she's carrying in her womb, or the child that she is nursing, and she feared that, for example, she'd have a miscarriage, that is, if she fasted while pregnant, it would lead to a miscarriage, or that the milk that she produces would become scarce and the child would thus be harmed by that, then they are allowed to break their fast and they are obligated to make it up. As for if she was pregnant or nursing and she broke the fast only due to fearing for the child, that is, she didn't fear for herself or herself and the child, rather she feared for the child only, then she would make up the fast and she's obligated to pay an expiation. For every missed day, she must give the fill of 2 average-sized cupped hands of the most common staple crop of the land. And this is called 1 mud. As for the traveler who is traveling a distance that allows shortening the prayer, that is the 4 cycled prayers like Dhuhr, Asr, and Isha, to 2 rak'ah, whether the travel was by plane, car, or other means, even if it was a comfortable travel, that is, traveling this way would not lead to fasting being a hardship upon them, then it is permissible for this traveler to break his fast, even if the fasting was not difficult for them. It is, however, a condition that they would enter into the state of a traveler before the Fajr time entered. Allah the Exalted said in the Quran in verse 184 of Surah Al-Baqarah, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ, which means whoever among you was sick or on a travel, then he makes up those days on other days. The Muslims have a consensus that the traveler is allowed to break his fasting while traveling. This is an Islamic rule that is mentioned in the Quran. However, if fasting was not difficult, that is, he's traveling, but with this travel, fasting would not be a hardship, then continuing the fasting is better than breaking it. Likewise, breaking the fast is permissible for the sick person if persisting on fasting while sick causes great difficulty, a harm that is usually unbearable. As for if this sickness has no effect on him while fasting, such as the likes of a headache or a toothache or other easy matters, then what is mandatory on him is to fast, because he does not have a religious excuse not to. It is obligatory on the menstruating woman, postpartum bleeding woman, and everyone who broke their fast with an excuse or without an excuse to make up their fasting, except the one who broke his fast because of old age. His body reached a state where he can no longer bear fasting due to old age, then he does not have to make up the fasting, or a sickness for which there is no hope for cure. These two, the person who broke their fasting due to old age and the person who has a sickness that he doesn't hope to recover from, they are only obligated to pay an expiation, which is for each one of them to pay a poor person 2 average-sized cupped hands full of the most common staple crop of the town, and that is 1 mud for every missed day. O brothers and sisters, O you who Allah made you reach the fasting of this year, thank Allah the Exalted for his endowment and ask him to enable you to do what he accepts. And use your time in this month by doing many acts of worship, many good deeds, and making plenty of sincere supplication. For indeed, the fasting person has a supplication upon breaking his fast at sunset that is not rejected. So be sincere to Allah the Exalted when supplicating, and ask Him to enable you to do the valid deeds, the acceptable, rewardable deeds, that which He accepts. Praise be to Allah the Exalted, the Lord of the worlds. Then the author, may Allah the Exalted have mercy upon him, said, the merits of the month of Ramadan. Surely, fasting is a great act of worship. Allah made it obligatory upon the believers to fulfill during the month of Ramadan every year. Fasting is greatly rewarded by Allah the Exalted. Verse 185 of Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah the Exalted says in it, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصمه ومن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون. In this verse, Allah the Exalted clarified the merit of the month of Ramadan. It is also praised, and in it He also praised the merit of the great Quran and elevated what the Quran contains of guidance and distinguishing truth from falsehood. It also, in this verse, it also gave the nation that believed in the Quran the glad tidings of being guided by Allah the Exalted. And it readies the nation for having gratitude for the endowments of its Lord, and all of what that includes of goodness and blessings to the extent of which only Allah the Exalted knows. The month of Ramadan is the 9th month of the lunar year, the Hijri year, the Islamic year. It is the month in which the Quran was brought down from the guarded tablet, Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet, to Baytul Izzah, which is in the first sky, the lowest sky. And that was during the night of Al-Qadr. Then Angel Jibreel alayhi salam came down with the Quran upon Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam in parts, in sections, sometimes coming with a whole chapter, sometimes coming with a number of verses. That is, he brought it to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam in segments, not all at once, as the books of the previous messengers were brought to them. The Quran was revealed as guidance for the people that takes them out of misguidance and directs them to excellence and to happiness in both abodes, that is, this worldly life and in the hereafter. What is meant is that the Quran was revealed as a guide for the people, and it clarifies for them the path of guidance, elucidating, that is, clarifying the way of victory and salvation, distinguishing for them between the truth and the falsehood in all matters of life. Whoever was alive when the month arrived, it is obligatory upon him to fast, as we mentioned with the details that have come before. Allah the Exalted made breaking the fasting for the excuse of sickness and travel lawful for you, and this is also mentioned in the verse. And whoever broke his fasting for these reasons has to make up the number of days that he did not fast. Allah the Exalted informed that He gives permission to the nation for the sick and the traveler to break the fast. And He did not make difficulty for you in the religion. His is the praise, that is, to Allah the Exalted is the praise, and His is the endowing. It is obligatory to make up the missed days so that you complete the number of days of the month of Ramadan for that year, whether 30 or 29 or 30 days. So if you miss 7 days, you make up 7 days. Allah guides you to know what the signs of the religion are. In this case, in what's mentioned in the verse, it is the Takbir, which means saying Allahu Akbar. That is said after completing Ramadan, because after Ramadan, when the Eid comes, the Muslims make Takbiratul Eid. You've heard it when they say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Walillahil hamd, until the end. This takbirah is made from the time the crescent is sighted, that is, the crescent for the beginning of Shawwal and the end of Ramadan, until the Imam's ihram for starting the Eid prayer. That is, when the Imam says Allahu Akbar to begin the Eid prayer. The takbir is among the matters that take precedence for one to busy himself with. It is a dhikr, it is a rewardable statement, a statement of remembrance that the Prophet ﷺ taught, and it entails great reward. The statement Allahu Akbar is a sentence that indicates that Allah the Exalted has complete power and that He is more knowledgeable than any other knower of anything and greater in status than anyone who has any status. And Allah the Exalted is dominant over everything. Confirming greatness for Allah the Exalted when saying Allahu Akbar is an implication of the oneness of God. That is, Allah the Exalted has no partner in Godhood. It means believing that Allah the Exalted is one without a partner and that there is no creator other than Him. Saying the takbir, saying Allahu Akbar after the fasting is finished has regal specialty. It has a lofty specialty to it. Because the idol worshippers used to give offerings to their idols, leaving food for them and slaughtering sacrifices for them. However, the Muslim saying Allahu Akbar signals that Allah is obeyed by the fasting and that He is clear from resembling the idols and the rest of all of the creations. Allah the Exalted obligated the fasting on you, brothers and sisters in faith, and recommended for you to say the takbir so that you would be by that among those thankful to Allah the Exalted for His endowments. The slave whose level of thanks makes him a shakir, a very thankful slave, is the one who only uses the endowments of Allah, that is what Allah the Exalted gave him, whether it's among his life, his health, his limbs, his faculties, his wealth, the possessions that he possesses. He only uses these endowments in what is permitted. He does not use what Allah the Exalted bestowed upon him in disobedience to Allah. These organs that Allah the Exalted bestowed upon us, there shall come a day when we will be unable to use them for what benefits us. Most people, when death comes to them, they lose control of their tongues. They are unable to speak. Their tongues become tied from the intensity of the pain. Upon that, one would regret, and he would say to himself, had I only used this tongue for what benefits me after death, and protected it and preserved it from what Allah the Exalted forbade. Brother and sisters in faith, the intelligent one is the one who protects his tongue, protects his hand, his feet, and his hearing and sight from what Allah the Exalted forbade while his body is healthy and in all situations. We ask Allah the Exalted to bless us in this great month of Ramadan. O Allah, enable us to make dhikr by the heart and with the tongue, and to thank you for your endowments, and to fulfill the acts of worship properly. O Lord, accept our acts of worship. Surely you are as-Sami'ul Alim. You are the one who sees, you are the one who hears, and is knowledgeable of everything. And Allah the Exalted knows best. Walhamdulillah wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.